With the arrival of Shadow of the Erd Tree, and a promise I may have made, I think now is the perfect time to go over some of the best early game weapons that can carry you into the Land of Shadow. In the spirit of giving everyone a fighting chance, I'll make this a limited series, going over a few weapons for each primary stat build. All of them will be obtainable immediately after getting Torrent from Melina, and each weapon will require very little, if any, combat to obtain. And what's a more fitting way to kick things off than by covering weapons for new Tarnished looking to use strength builds. Strength is the stat based around wielding massive weapons that come with lumbering heavy swings. Normally, when these connect, they deal really high damage to both health and poise, allowing you to make frequent critical strikes. Our first weapon will be the Rusted Anchor, which will require 26 strength and 9 dexterity to wield. This has solid strength scaling and can be infused with Ashes of War. If you happen to start with the hero class, you'll already have the 9 dexterity, however you'll only need 2 levels in strength to start swinging, since two-handing an armament gives a 50% strength boost. Having the standard Great Axe moveset, this does still find itself among the more unique weapons, dealing exclusively pierce damage. This unique trait, aside from making it strong against enemies like dragons or other scaly creatures, gives the opportunity to take advantage of counterattacking. Counterattacks in Elden Ring deal 30% increased damage, which can be boosted by an extra 15% by equipping the Spear Talisman. Some of you may be wondering, what exactly qualifies as a counterattack? And it's pretty simple. Any attack dealing pierce damage that hits during an enemy's attack animation will count as a counterattack. This technically enables an almost permanent 30% damage boost if you focus on counterattacking, and that's before any buffs or your Flask of Wondrous Physic. As for the default weapon skill, the Anchor will come with Barbaric Roar, which isn't a bad option to pair with this weapon type. Costing 16 FP, this will grant a 40-second buff that, aside from changing your heavy attacks into an extendable swinging combo, will also grant a 7.5% physical damage boost. As I mentioned earlier though, this is infusible with Ashes of War, allowing you to customize it to best fit your needs. If your general playstyle leans into trading blows with your opponent and tanking through damage, this is a fantastic weapon for you. The Anchor can be found just south of Limgrave, in the Weeping Peninsula. From the First Step site of Grace, we can go east along the lake shoreline and head towards the ruins far in the distance. Once you can see another puddle with some crabs splashing about, turn slightly south to see the Aguil Lake South site of Grace, which I recommend grabbing, just in case. From here, we'll go southeast onto the road and follow it to the Bridge of Sacrifice. Be wary of the ballista here, as it can quickly dismount you or just flat out kill you. And on the other side, we can grab the site of Grace off the road to the west. From here, we'll continue along the road south beyond the busted up cart, and once you've passed the Scarab, you can turn north and head uphill. Beyond the small pond on your left, hop up on the rock that's behind it to find the south of the Lookout Tower site of Grace. Continuing on, we'll go northwest to the lower path and follow it down and west around the mountain. Once you see the Miranda flowers, turn south and run beyond them to find the Morn Tunnel nestled in the base of the cliff. Inside, we'll have to defeat the end boss for our weapon, but believe it or not, almost every enemy beforehand can be skipped. The boss waiting for us will be the Scaly Misbegotten. This guy has some lumbering attacks, but rather low resistances and a smaller health pool. Even as a base level hero class character, you should be able to make quick work of him with relatively little trouble. And once he's felled, you'll receive the Rusted Anchor. Our second weapon for strength builds will be something a little more traditional, the ever-popular Greatsword. This colossal sword will require 31 strength and 12 dexterity to wield, and is infusible with Ashes of War, but bears a hefty 23 weight. If you start with the hero class, you'll need a minimum of 8 levels invested, split between 3 in dexterity and 5 in strength in order to two-hand. You'll probably also want an extra 1 in endurance in order to maintain a medium equip load, but this can be bypassed by unequipping your helm or bracers. These 8 or 9 levels will come rather quickly when starting out, so don't be intimidated by the initial investment before pumping points into Vigor. The Greatsword will come with a unique sweeping light attack that will take a little getting used to, As it has a slow startup, it deals real heavy damage to both health and poise. It is also the longest Colossal Sword available, showing off its range when using a crouch or roll attack, which extends the sword out for a long poke. Every attack available with this weapon, light or heavy, will deal very high damage, and stagger or interrupt most medium and small enemies that are hit. The weakest link on the weapon, though, is definitely its skill, Stamp Upward Cut, which will cost 13 FP to fully execute. The upward slash can deal some decent damage and stance break foes, even sending smaller ones airborne, but it takes a bit of effort to set up. Since the skill isn't locked, you may as well customize the Greatsword with an Ash of War to use a skill that fits you best and tune the weapon to your needs. For any Tarnished who wants to wield a massive hunk of iron that cuts down everything in front of it, or just wants to feel like Guts from Berserk, this Colossal Sword is the weapon to grab. To find the Greatsword for yourself, you'll have to head over into the rotted zone of Caelid. Rather than run all the way there, we'll start from the first step site of Grace and make our way east to the Dragon Burnt Ruins. In front of the largest pillar in the ruins, we can find a basement littered with rats. Once you've cleared the way, you can open the door across the chamber to find a chest. This is in fact a trap, but one we'll use intentionally as it transports us to the first main room, the Celia Crystal Tunnel within Caelid. Exiting the shack, we'll turn to our left and go south out of the room, being wary of the pest threads that may follow you through the tunnel, and drop down to grab the Site of Grace. Exiting the tunnel, we'll go south towards the Swamp of Aeonia and follow the shoreline southwest. Once the shoreline turns more to the west, continue through the swamp southwest and towards a cliffside with some roots protruding. Following along the base of the cliffs, we can go up a small ledge to find the Aeonia Swamp Shore Site of Grace. If you do choose to rest at this or any Site of Grace outside of Limgrave, it will trigger Melina's invitation to the Round Table Hold. So if you do happen to head there, just fast travel back here once you're finished and continue following along. A little ways up to the northwest, we can find the Astray from Caelid Highway North Grace. From here, our directions get a bit simpler. You just need to jump onto the road and head north, where we can grab the Smoldering Wall Site of Grace, and push through the Caelum Ruins to grab another Site of Grace on the northern side. From here, we can finally grab our weapon. To the northwest, you'll see a broken down cart. We'll give the big doggo a wide berth and head straight to the rear of the cart. You'll have to be quick, as you'll probably aggro a couple enemies, but from the chest in the back, we can loot the Greatsword. And now what kind of video for strength builds could this be without recommending at least some sort of option for bonking? Normally I'd tell you to grab the brick hammer from Stormveil Castle's side route, but that requires beating Margit, and this video is about weapons to use fresh out of the Stranded Graveyard. So instead, we'll shift focus over to the Great Mace. With the sole requirement of 28 strength to wield, this hefty Great Hammer is infusible with Ashes of War and buffable by spells and weapon greases. If you started with the hero class, you'll only need 3 levels invested into strength in order to two-hand this. Coming with the default Great Hammer moveset, the Great Mace reaches just above average length and deals some really solid physical damage for its archetype. This thing has some heavy bonks, easily staggering almost any enemy in just a few strikes. The damage output and strength scaling of this weapon is also very good, and it only gets better as it's upgraded and you invest more into strength. Honestly, this thing tanks, and its default weapon skill Endure really allows you to lean into a heavy poise based playstyle. Costing 9 FP, you slam the mace into the ground, gaining 45% damage reduction and increased poise for 3 seconds. The amount of poise gained will prevent stagger under the majority of circumstances, and will allow you to hit a fully charged heavy attack rather easily. As I said earlier though, the Great Mace is infusible with Ashes of War, and can be tailored to your playstyle with ease. To grab this for yourself, we'll have to travel further than any of our previous weapons, all the way to the far north of Liurnia of the Lakes. Starting from the gate front side of Grace, follow the road northeast, dashing to avoid the falling giant. Once you pass the barricades and the small golden tree, you'll encounter your first wolf tornado. Running beyond the pack, go up the rocks to find the Stormhill Shack Site of Grace. From here, remount Torrent and head north, off the road and through the trees. On the other side, you'll come to a finger reader at the start of a broken bridge. Crossing and heading to the end, go west down the rubble and follow the path along the cliffside. This will have a couple packs of wolves littered throughout, so just dash whenever you see one notice you. After passing the castle walls on your left, join the dirt path through the woods and grab the lake-facing cliffs Site of Grace. Similar to Sites of Grace in Caelid, if you rested any open-world Grace in Liurnia, it will trigger Melina's invitation to the Round Table Hold if you haven't already been there. If you do happen to accept at any point, you can just fast travel back to whatever Grace you rested at and continue following along. From the lake-facing cliff Site of Grace, continue down the path winding north through the chasm and go beyond the enemy camp to find a merchant sitting near a campfire, as well as the Liurnia Lakeshore Site of Grace. Mounting Torrent, we'll follow the road northwest to the Laskiar Ruins, grabbing the Site of Grace as you pass by. Continuing northwest, dash through all of the enemies in the ruins and make your way over to the Scenic Isle and grab the Site of Grace sitting at the top of it. Now we'll head due west, favoring the northern route around the large protruding rock formations. Once you see the tower, head straight for it and around the southern side to grab the converted tower Site of Grace. From here, we just need to follow the nearby road and go to the right downhill from the minor Erd tree. Following the theme of keeping to the rightmost path at a fork, you'll eventually pass an Everjail on your left and make your way to the foot of the four belfries Site of Grace. We'll keep on this road due northeast, but from this point forward, we'll encounter a lot more enemies, so be sure to give them a wide berth if you don't want to be pursued. Beyond the giants pulling the cart and the mounted knight, you'll reach the northern Liurnia Lakeshore Site of Grace. Just ahead you can find the map fragment for this chunk of the map, and just northeast of that is the King's Realm Ruins. Heading through where the road looks like it's supposed to go, it actually does, as it's just an illusory wall blocking your path. Behind it, off the path, we can find the road to the Manor Site of Grace. Now from here, we'll want to run along the cliff's edge to our right, avoiding the rain of arrows coming from Caria Manor. Once you drop down to a lower cliff, head north to find a rock structure that grants access across the chasm below to the northeastern side of Liurnia. Dropping down and following a path uphill, we'll come to the Bellum Church, which will contain a sacred tier as well as another Site of Grace. But luckily, this is the last Grace we'll have to grab. Exiting the church, go north and follow the cliff's edge heading northeast. Once you reach the ledge, cross over the road and haul it, as you'll be chased by a decent amount of enemies. Running up the road, turn into the camp surrounded by the spike barricades, and under the first tent on your left, we can find a chest. And inside, we can finally obtain the Great Mace. And that's it for my set of strength weapons for New Tarnished. I hope this video has been helpful, and if it has, leave a like or a comment. And if you'd like to see more of this type of content, consider subscribing so you can be notified of all my future videos. Until next time, I'm StoneBear13, and good luck out there, New Tarnished.